The stars were cold and silent. The queen stood tall in her throne of steel. Her crown of battle glowed with the fire of victory. Her fleet moved across the black sky like blades of light. She was feared by enemies and worshipped by her people. But deep inside the endless dark, another danger was waiting. A human sat at the edge of the command hall. Not a warrior, not a hero, only a survivor. He was taken long ago from his world. He was weak in the eyes of the aliens. He was nothing in the eyes of the proud soldiers. But his eyes were sharp, and his mind was awake. He watched the queen with silent respect. She had spared his life once when others wanted him gone, and for that reason he stayed close, never speaking much. Then the silence broke. The alarms screamed through the ship. The queen rose with fire in her eyes. Pirates came from the shadows of the void. Their ships black and twisted like vultures. They moved fast and struck without warning. The queen shouted orders. Her fleet turned and fired beams of fire. The sky lit with war. The human gripped the cold rail and felt fear. Pirates tore through the first line of defense. Explosions filled the dark. Ships of the queen burned and broke apart. The human saw bodies floating in the endless night. He saw warriors who had never lost fall in seconds. The queen stood strong. She held her blade high. Her voice thundered through the halls. No fear, no retreat. Fight till the last breath. But the pirates had a plan. They wanted her alive. Their leader came in a ship bigger than all others. It swallowed light and cut through the fire. The queen fought them with all her power, but one by one her defenders fell. Her guards fell at her feet, bleeding and broken. The human ran through smoke and fire. He tried to find cover as the walls shook around him. Then the pirates boarded. Their boots slammed on the floor. Their weapons screamed with fire. The queen fought them herself. She cut through them like lightning, but there were too many. The human saw her fall to her knees. Chains of light bound her arms. Her crown was torn away. Her voice still roared with pride, but her body was taken. The human crawled into a broken shaft. He heard the queen shout as they dragged her away. He could not fight. He had no weapon. He had no strength. But he had a will to live. He crawled deeper into the wreck. He slipped into the escape bay. The bay burned and cracked, but one pod remained. He climbed inside and the pod fell into the dark. Through the window he saw the flagship explode. He saw the pirates vanish into the void, carrying their prize. He pressed his hand against the glass. He whispered words no one would hear. He promised himself that this was not the end. The queen had been taken, but she was not lost. Not while he still breathed. The pod drifted through silence. The human shook with fear and anger. He was alive while others were gone. He felt weak, yet he felt something burning inside. He thought of the day she had spared him. He thought of her voice full of fire and command, and he knew that fate had placed this burden on him. He was no warrior, no king, no alien hero. He was only human, but he would not let her die in the hands of pirates. The stars stretched endless around him. The pod carried him toward the unknown, and in his heart the fire grew stronger. The story was only beginning. The pod drifted far from the broken fleet. The human sat alone, in silence. His breath was heavy, his hands shook. He could still hear the sound of fire and screams. He could still see the queen in chains, her crown torn away, her body dragged by pirates. The memory burned inside his chest like a wound. He looked at the black sea of stars. There was no one left, no ships, no allies, no voice to guide him. He was alone in the void, but the thought of leaving her behind crushed him. He owed her his life. She had shown him mercy when no one else had. He could not forget that moment. He could not run away now. The pod was damaged. The screen blinked with red lights. Oxygen was low. Fuel was almost gone, but he refused to give in. He opened the control panel with trembling hands. He worked with wires and broken circuits. The pod coughed and sparked. It became a dying ship, but still it moved. A weak flame in the endless dark. The human whispered to himself, "I am nothing, but I cannot stay nothing. She gave me a chance to live. Now I must give her a chance to survive. His voice was small, but his heart grew stronger with each word he searched. The wreckage of fallen ships, floating metal, drifting bodies, silent weapons. He pulled pieces into the pod and built what he could. A broken scanner, a weak engine, a small map system. He was no engineer, but desperation made him clever, piece by piece. He gave the pod new breath. Piece by piece he built hope from scraps. Days passed without food, without water. He lived on fragments stored in the pod. His lips were dry, his eyes heavy, but the fire inside never faded every time he thought of giving up. He remembered her voice. No fear, no retreat, fight till the last breath. The words of the Queen became his shield against despair. Finally, the scanner lit with a faint signal. It showed the trail of the pirates, a thin line across the void like a scar. He knew where they had gone, toward the pirate strongholds deep in forbidden space. Places where no empire dared to enter. But he did not fear, he only felt a pull stronger than death. He had to follow that path. The ship rattled as he set the course. Engines screamed, weak but alive. The pod turned into a small vessel of war. For one, the human gripped the controls. His body weak, but his will sharper than steel. On the journey, he dreamed of the Queen. He saw her in chains, but her eyes still fierce. He saw her fire, refusing to die. He swore to himself he would bring that fire back. Not for glory, not for reward, but because he could not live with himself if he failed. The stars moved slowly. The void stretched like an endless road. Then the scanner beeped again. It showed a station hidden among rocks, a pirate outpost, small but full of danger. The human stared at the image. His heart pounded with fear and rage. He knew if he went closer he might not return, but he also knew if he turned away the Queen would be lost forever. He whispered again to himself, I am human, I am small, but I am not weak. He shut down the pod lights. He drifted closer in silence. The outpost grew larger, its guns pointed at the sky, ships docked around it like vultures on a corpse. He saw the banners of the pirates burning red. He saw their laughter in the signal waves. They believed themselves untouchable. Pod shook as he slipped into a shadow of rock. He shut down the engines. He floated in darkness, watching them, his breath slow, his eyes sharp. He studied their movements, their patrols, their codes. Every detail burned into his mind. He would need all of it to reach her, to step into the fire and survive. The hours passed like years. He waited until his body was stiff. He watched until his eyes grew red, but he did not close them. He could not rest, not while she suffered in chains, not while her voice echoed in his mind. At last he made his choice. He would leave the pod and go inside. He would step into the lion's den with nothing but will. The plan was madness, the odds were death, but he smiled faintly in the dark. For the first time he felt alive. For the first time he felt the fire of purpose. This was his path. This was his burden. Human gripped the old knife he had found in the wreck. It was small against the weapons of the pirates, but it was sharp in his hand, sharp like the promise he made. To save her, to not let her fire die alone, he opened the hatch of the pod. Cold air bit his skin. The outpost lights glowed in the distance. The path ahead was filled with shadows. He stepped into the void with nothing but courage. The pirates did not know yet, but the hunt had begun. The human moved through the shadows. The pirate outpost loomed like a beast of iron. Its walls burned with red lights and dark smoke. Ships came and left carrying stolen goods and slaves. The human blended with a group of traders, his clothes torn, his face marked with dirt. No one looked at him. Twice he was nothing but another broken soul among many inside the station. The air was thick with oil and blood. Voices echoed with cruel laughter. Pirates boasted of battles and killings. The human kept his eyes low, but inside his mind burned with rage. Every step he took was a step closer to her. He walked through halls filled with cages. Aliens of many kinds chained and beaten. Merchants bargained over lives like cattle. The human clenched his fists. He wanted to strike them, but he held his anger down. He could not die yet. He had to find her first. At last he reached the main hall. There she was, the queen chained to a wall of iron, her armor stripped, her body bruised. But her eyes still blazed with fire. The pirates gathered around her. Laughing, they called her a trophy, a prize of war. But she did not bow. She stood tall even in chains. Her voice roared with pride. She cursed them. She defied them. The human felt his chest tighten. Her spirit was unbroken, and that spirit gave him strength. Hid behind a broken pillar watching her, his heart pounded with fury and sorrow, he wanted to run to her, to break her chains, but he had no weapon, no power, no plan. Asterisk. If he rushed now, both of them would die. So he waited, he listened, he watched a pirate guard walk near. The human slipped behind him like a shadow, one strike of his small knife, and the guard fell silent. The human dragged the body into the dark. His hands shook, but his mind stayed clear. He took the guard's weapon, a crude blaster, heavy in his hands. Now he had a chance. Hours passed. The hall grew quieter. Most pirates drank and sang in the lower decks. The human moved closer to the queen. He whispered her name softly. Her head lifted. Her eyes widened in shock. "A human," she said, with disbelief. "How are you here?" He stepped closer and whispered again, "I came for you. I will not leave you here." Her eyes softened for a moment, but then her fire returned. "Fool," she said, "you will die." He shook his head. Better to die trying than live in shame. Before they could speak more, a shout rang out. Another guard had seen him. The alarm screamed through the station. The queen roared against her chains. The human raised the blaster and fired. The guard fell, but more came. Heavy boots thundered in the halls. Voices screamed, "Intruder! Intruder!" The human's cover was gone. He stood in the middle of the hall, blaster in hand. The queen watched. With wide eyes, her chains rattled as she tried to break free. The pirates rushed in with fire in their hands. The human fired back. The air burned with smoke and sparks. Bodies fell, but more came. He ducked behind the pillar again, blaster shaking in his hands, his breath heavy, his heart wild. But he did not stop. He shouted to the queen, "Hold on, I will come for you." She shouted back, her voice like thunder, "Do not waste your life." But he only smiled through the smoke. "My life is already yours." Battle raged around him. The pirates cursed and fired. The human moved like a shadow, desperate, but alive. Every shot, every strike was a step closer to her. He knew death was near. He knew the odds were hopeless. But he also knew he could not turn back. The hall shook with fire and rage. The queen's voice rose above it all. "Fight, human, fight," she roared. Her fire filled him with new strength. He gripped the blaster tighter. He stepped from the shadows once more, ready to face them all. The pirates closed in, their teeth sharp, their blades shining. The human stood small before them, but in his eyes burned the light of defiance. He was no warrior, no alien hero, but he was human, and that was enough. The hall filled with smoke. The fight was not over. It was only the beginning. The hall was fire and smoke. The human stood with the blaster shaking in his hands. Pirates rushed from every side, their voices loud with hate. The queen roared in chains, her eyes blazing with pride. The human fired again, and again bodies fell, yet more came with blades and guns. He ducked behind the broken pillar, breath heavy, hands trembling. The walls burned, sparks rained like fire from the sky. His body cried for rest, but his mind refused. He looked at her, chained tall and proud. She was the reason he could not stop. He whispered to himself one thought, "I must free her, no matter what." The pirates closed in. The human pressed the trigger until it clicked empty. The weapon was dead. He felt the weight of doom pressing on him, but his eyes found the body of a fallen guard. He leapt forward, grabbed the blade from cold fingers. Steel burned in his grip. Small against the storm, yet sharp with will, he fought with fury, every swing desperate, every strike wild. The pirates laughed at first, but their laughter turned to cries as he cut through them. He was not skilled, he was not strong, but his madness, his fire made him dangerous. The queen shouted his name, not with fear, but with respect. Her voice filled him with more Strength than any weapon still, the enemy was endless. They drove him back with force. He staggered, blood dripping from his arm. His chest burned, his legs weak. He almost fell, but then something inside him broke free. A cry escaped his mouth, not of pain but of defiance. The pirates stepped back for a breath. They saw not a slave, not a weak man. They saw something else, something they could not crush. In that breath he struck the chains of the queen. The blade sparked against iron, again and again. He struck until the chains cracked. Her arms burst free. Her roar shook the hall. She grabbed the weapon from a fallen pirate, and for the first time they stood side by side, human and queen, back to back against the horde. Hall turned into a storm, a fury. She swung with the strength of a warrior born. He fought with the fire of a soul unbroken. Together they cut through the tide. The pirates screamed as their victory turned to chaos. Blood and smoke filled the air. The queen shouted forward, "We must reach the hangar." They ran through fire-filled corridors. Alarms screamed, red lights flashing. Pirates chased from behind. More blocked their path ahead. The queen cut them down like thunder. The human shot stolen guns with sharp aim. They moved like one, though from different worlds. Every step was carved with will. They reached the hangar at last. Rows of pirate ships filled the vast hall. Engines glowed, weapons ready. The queen pointed to a fast raider, small but quick. They sprinted through fire as pirates swarmed from all sides. Blades clashed, guns roared, bodies fell. But at last they climbed aboard the ship. The queen struck the controls. The human fired at the enemy pouring inside. Engines screamed as the ship lifted the hangar doors open to the void. But a massive warship blocked the path. Its guns turned toward them. The queen's eyes narrowed with rage. The human felt his heart pound like thunder. They could not turn back. They could not stop. They had to break through or the pirate warship unleashed fire. Explosions ripped around them. The small raider shook like a dying beast. The human strapped himself in, shouting, "Do it." The queen slammed the throttle. The ship roared into the storm of fire. The void blazed with light and death. They twisted through the barrage. Shots grazed the hull, tearing metal. The queen held the controls steady. The human manned the guns, firing with every breath. The warship loomed larger. It was a wall of death, unbreakable, but they did not slow. They did not fear. The queen shouted above the storm, "We are not done." The human answered with fire in his voice, "Not while I breathe." The raider pierced through the flames, closer and closer to the monster ship. The pirates screamed through the "Come, stop them. Stop them now." The queen's eyes burned with wrath. The human's heart burned with hope. Side by side they defied the impossible, and before them stood the final storm. The raider shook as fire rained from the warship. The void lit with flames as if stars were dying. The queen gripped the controls, her eyes sharp and fierce. The human manned the guns, blasting at the storm. But the enemy was vast, their weapons endless. Every shot tore into the small ship like claws of steel. The queen shouted above the roar, "We cannot hold this path." The human answered, his voice heavy with fire, "Then we make our own path." He turned the guns on the weak points of the warship, engines, vents, turrets, blind spots. Every hit opened cracks in the wall of iron, but the warship was a beast too large. It struck with one blast and the raiders spun like a broken toy. Sparks filled the cabin, metal groaned like a dying beast. The queen's face was bloodied, yet unbroken. The human's hands blistered on the guns. Still they fought, still they endured. The pirates laughed over the comes. They thought the end was near. They thought the queen and the human would die like dogs. But the human looked at the queen. Her fire was still burning, and he felt something rise inside him, something stronger than fear. A choice that could not be undone. He shouted, "Take the controls." The queen turned to him, confused. "What are you doing?" she asked. He did not answer. He only ran to the core chamber of the ship. Queen realized too late. He was planning to overload the engine, a suicidal strike to cripple the monster ship. She roared his name, her voice filled with fury and sorrow. But he did not stop. He pulled wires, sparks burned his hands. He set the core to charge brighter than a sun. The ship screamed with warning. The Queen's heart pounded with rage. She rushed after him, grabbing his arm. "Do not do this," she shouted. He looked at her, eyes filled with fire and grief. He whispered with steady breath, "Better one human lost than a queen forgotten." Tears filled her eyes, though she was a warrior of steel. But she saw his will unbreakable. She saw his choice already made. She nodded once, her lips trembling. Then she pulled him back. "If you fall, I fall," she said. "We fight together, or not at all." The ship roared forward like a burning star. The warship loomed larger, its guns ready. The raider charged its core to the edge of death. The human and the Queen stood together in the fire. One last strike, one last chance. The raider dove into the heart of the enemy. The pirate screamed too late. The core exploded with blinding light. The void shook as the monster ship cracked and burned. Its guns silenced, its body torn in half. The Queen and the human were thrown into blackness, but the small emergency pod ejected at the last breath, carrying them away through fire and wreckage. Silence returned to the void. The Queen opened her eyes. The human lay bleeding beside her, his chest weak, his breath shallow. But he was alive. She held him with trembling hands. She whispered, "No warrior of my people has done what you have done. No blood of kings, no son of heroes. Only you have saved me. You have saved us all." The pod drifted to the border of her empire. Rescue ships found them glowing in the dark. The Queen stood tall, though her body was broken. She carried the human in her arms. Her people bowed in silence at the sight. They had never seen her bow her head to anyone. But now she knelt before him. She raised his hand high and spoke with thunder. "This human is no slave, no weakling, no shadow. This human is the savior of your Queen. His courage greater than stars, his will stronger than steel." The warriors cried out with pride. The human's name echoed through the halls of the fleet. He was lifted not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as a brother in arms, a legend among warriors' days. Later the Queen stood before her throne, the human at her side, his wounds healing slowly. She placed her crown upon her head, but her voice was softer when she spoke to him. "You gave me back my throne, you gave me back my fire. For that I give you my vow. Your name will live forever among my people, not as a stranger, not as a slave, but as the one who stood against the endless dark and won." The human bowed his head, eyes heavy with tears. He had found his place at last, not in chains, not in silence, but in honor and fire among the stars. And so the story ended, not with defeat, not with despair, but with a vow written in blood and courage, the vow of a queen and the heart of a human. The end.